When Howard swears that he is going to succeed and thrive in order to get revenge on Jimmy and Kim for ruining his career and being this malevolent force hiding in the shadows and causing him so much despair and humiliation, he's being honest. And one doesn't doubt that Howard could do exactly this, or at least he would like to. He is, despite his smug arrogance at times, a committed person. He genuinely wants to try to do what is right the straight and narrow way, and he wants to try and help people out as he does it. He is not a particularly brilliant person, nor is he this fountain of compassion and mercy, but he is basically an everyman, at least as much as someone born with a silver spoon in their mouth can be. He is someone who has not had to struggle all his life to succeed, as have Jimmy and Kim, but he is also not immune to things going completely wrong in his life. He's not a stranger to adversity. He's become a resilient person, and despite all these professional setbacks, and despite his marriage falling apart for completely unrelated reasons, he's determined to do what he believes to be right. He has all the poise and composure typical of a corporate attorney. His faults are only those common to people in his profession, and he has significantly fewer flaws than many of them, especially compared to a lot of the other corporate attorneys shown on this show. He is not a perfect model person, but he is someone who recognizes his own flaws and his own basic insignificance. He knows, in a certain sense, that he is just a suit, and he's trying to be better, as much as a flawed person like him can be. He wants to interact with others in good faith. He wants to talk with people seriously and without manipulation. And while he wants to succeed, he wants to do it without willfully antagonizing others. He understands what is right. He has a basic moral grasp on what is right, what is good, what he should be aspiring to be, and he is trying in his fits and spurts to do that. This does not mean he's not arrogant or that he's not pretentious, and it does not even mean that I don't feel some flicker of sympathy for Kim in her attempt to ruin his life, but compared to a lot of the other people in the show, he is as close as one can come to a model of how to be a basically decent person in a basically indecent world. And he leaves one with little doubt that if he was able to walk out of Jim and Kimmy's house, he would do everything he can in order to build himself back up and make himself a success and try to clear his name. As difficult as it might be, as many obstacles as he might face, he would do it. And now none of that matters. In an instant, all that resilience stopped mattering. It was all taken away from him. Any chance to regain any sort of respect or position, to improve his life, that's all gone. The other lawyers will only think of him as a drug addict who lost his mind and went off the deep end. They will whisper about him in hushed, acrid tones while acting significantly worse than Howard ever did. Lalo doesn't care about any of that. He doesn't care about Howard's attempts at self-improvement. He doesn't care about basic morality, which matters so deeply much to Howard despite his flaws. For Lalo, Howard's just an obstacle. He's an annoyance. He's a loose end to be cut off, and so he does. And that's all there is to it. Lalo continues on, and the show turns into its endgame. There's no sense that Howard really deserved any of this, and there is no sense that this death needed to happen for the wheels and gears of the universe to turn and spin to where they are at the start of Breaking Bad. Yes, someone like Nacho needs to die. Someone like Lalo eventually will have to die. Because these characters are not in Breaking Bad. Their fates were already sealed, and all that's left for this show to do is bring them to those fates with a bit of nobility and a bit of elegance and grace. Not meaning empty puffery and refinement, but meaning the kind of elegance typical of Greek tragedies. But Howard didn't have to die. There is absolutely a way that the show could have been written where he continues to live a prosperous life of trying in inches and centimeters to try and be a better person. His death is senseless, it's brutal, it's callous, and it has no grand tragic function. Howard, slightly conceited, would probably think of himself as similar to Job, subjected to all kinds of torment and malice despite not doing anything wrong. And this isn't quite true. Howard remains unable to see why people wouldn't like him. He remains enclosed in his little bubble of lawyerly superiority. He scoffs at the idea of Jimmy and Kim getting one up on him as a result of how privileged he is compared to them, and how he has had everything easily given to him without him having to constantly scrape and struggle and fight for it, unlike Jimmy and Kim, who suffer from pretty significant inferiority complexes because of their having to navigate the Byzantine, often inscrutable legal bureaucracy, and having to take advantage of every little opportunity available to them just to scrape by and try and make their way up the ladder. Jimmy and Kim are not entirely baseless in their attacks on Howard. And his interest in Eastern philosophy is quite New Agey and rather shallow. He goes to therapy, which is fine, it's good, but he very much seems self-aggrandizing about the fact that he is trying to improve himself, that he's trying to be a better person. He is still a bit of a narcissist, and he is far from a complete moral exemplar. There are reasons for people to dislike Howard Hamlin, even if Kim and Jimmy take it way too far. He is not entirely Job, but he is much closer to Job than he is to a traditional Greek or Shakespearean tragic figure. These figures, as you might remember, are defined by a tragic flaw. They have all these aspirations for fulfilling their will. They try to enact that will on an uncaring and unsympathetic world. They have a basic sense of nobility, not meaning status necessarily. Howard has the status, but in the sense that they have certain qualities in themselves that set them apart from the average Joe or Jane. For instance, in this universe, you have Walter White, who has his incredible intelligence and scheming. You have Jimmy, who, while not quite as doomed as Walter White, is still very much defined by his ability to take any licks given to him and deal them back. He's very resourceful and intuitive. And you have Kim, who's just not only a brilliant strategist, but she is purely dedicated to whatever goal she sets her mind to. And then these virtues are necessarily connected to flaws that lead to the downfall of these characters. Kim's dedication can lead her to immorality when it's directed in the wrong way, even if she believes it's for a good cause. especially since it's clear that she prioritizes this getting revenge over the actual causes she ostensibly cares about. Something very similar is seen with Walter White, who is someone who always talks about how aggrieved he is and how fate dealt him a bad hand, but even when he receives early in Breaking Bad the chance to get all that money to pay for his cancer treatment, he turns it down because of his pride, and that pride is, as it often is for tragic figures, what leads to their downfall. Pride goeth before the fall, as they say. But Howard doesn't really have any of these virtues or vices. He is very ordinary. And I don't say that in a bad way. He has, of course, inherited his position. And he has a status that elevates him far above many other people without any hard work or scheming or intellect or wisdom of his own. And there is perhaps cause to dislike him for that, especially when it comes with a bit of arrogance and conceitedness that he is trying to move past but is not quite transcended. Yet, he's still very ordinary. He has ordinary virtues and ordinary vices. He's basically kind. He might come off as a little patronizing, but he does want the best for others. And he is a bit performative, a bit too obsessed with trying to make himself out to be this noble and caring person. But he's not a bad person. He very much wants to do things the right way, even when it's hard. He is a symbol of basic moral goodness that most people could exemplify if they're willing to just commit themselves to whatever relationships they might have with foremost sincerity and thoughtfulness. If he is the most moral person in Better Call Saul, as a lot of fans have suggested, it is more because of an absence of vice than any particular wellspring of virtue. He tries his best to keep himself clean, composed, professional, not because he's particularly attached to his reputation, but because he tries to control what he can control, those being how he presents himself and how he goes about his day, and his perspectives and his interactions toward others, as a defense against what he can't control, that being his marriage falling apart, and on a much larger scale, the cosmic, almost wrath that seems to descend on him as a result of Jimmy and Kim's manipulations and schemes. Take away his status and his privilege, and he's basically like everyone else. He's a man of basic intelligence, basic decency, and basic thoughtfulness who's trying to keep his life together in a universe that appears desperate to torment him. Perhaps he is a Job-like figure after all, at least in the sense that Coen brothers characters are. The typical Coen brothers protagonist, after all, is not entirely innocent. They can be a bit snide and condescending, a bit myopic and obsessed with their own values and their own interests, but they are absolutely innocent of the fate the world decides to burden them with, and that certainly fits Howard. A flawed but still sympathetic soul, whose death is one of the most brutal, unnecessary, and deeply affecting in the entirety of Better Call Saul, and in the entire Breaking Bad universe. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this before anyone else. I realize this is a little different from what I normally do, but I have a lot of thoughts about this episode of Better Call Saul and our schlub, blue blood lawyer, Howard. Anyway, tune in soon for the next analysis. It will be coming soon, promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.